Hey YouTube, TK here. Welcome back to the channel for those who are familiar with me. So, this is now part 2 of my fuel economy videos. So, this one we're going to be covering fuel pressure regulators. Now, a lot of you know that carburetors require certain fuel pressures. SUs are no exception to this. In fact, they require less fuel pressure than what a lot of other carburetors take. So basically, this video is going to be me just briefly talking about my experience, the savings that I've had in my own car. So we'll go over and have a look at that in a moment, so you can see exactly where I've fitted that. Now, we'll just add, if you haven't seen part 1, go and have a look at that, because that's, you know, heated manifolds in the hotter thermostat. So I'll briefly go into about talking about that, so this is what I ended up with the heated manifold and the 88-degree thermostat. Now the thermostat has changed, and I'll briefly mention to you why that has changed. So we'll just go back over to the car. Just a small walk over here. Here it is, once again, in the same spot as it was last time. Now, for those who have watched part 1, they'll notice something is blatantly different this time. The radiator's changed. Now, the alloy radiator started last week, did develop a crack, and the local radiator repair shop didn't want to know much about it because it was actually in the core. So I just thought, stuff it, I'll get a new radiator. Now, because it's changed materials, so this is the ARP 2000 radiator available from Mini Spares. Because it's a different material and it's got a different capacity, this actually cools better than the alloy Redline radiator that I had in there. Nothing against Redline. It was a very good radiator for the 3 years that I had it. It technically should have probably lasted a little bit longer, but ho-hum. Anyway, so that went in there, and then a week later, my heater decided to also develop a leak. Yay. So that's also been replaced, so everything's now cooling more efficiently, which, if you watch part 1, coolant temperatures basically made the manifold run cooler, and changing the state of the fuel from vaporized back to atomized, so the engine wasn't as efficient. It ended up running leaner, so I've been battling that recently, but I've nailed that by putting a 91-degree thermostat in it. So just jam as much heat into it as I can, back to how it was prior to the radiator letting go. So I'm really happy with that. So that went in. The heater now works terrific, because at the moment we're in the middle of winter and it's not that fantastic. But anyway, that's not what this video is about, but I just thought I'd let you know that that's what's been happening, and that's why that radiator's changed. This is what we're talking about. In particular, the Malpassi Filter King fuel pressure regulators. Now, these are a terrific wee little unit, because obviously they've got the filter in them. They do 2 jobs, obviously regulating the fuel and filtering the fuel. Now, there's a number of benefits from having a fuel pressure regulator fitted. Now, what I noticed when I fitted mine was I had set the fuel pressure to, sorry, not the fuel pressure, I had set the AFR idle reading on my gas analyzer. So it was idling at, I do believe it was in the mid-14s. This is a couple of months later from when I actually tuned the car, and obviously I haven't had the gas analyzer on it for a long time. So I'm just going off memory. It was about 14.5 AFR. May have even been a little bit higher than that, probably about 14.9. But anyway, It was clean. So fair to say, you know, when I put a fuel pressure regulator onto it and took fuel away, it then ran leaner. So then I actually had to richen up the idle mixture to compensate for that loss. Now I'll explain why I had that loss, but what we've also got to you know, come to terms with, and what you've also got to understand is the needle and seats in these carburetors. Here's one. This is a rebuilt one that I've got sitting on the shelf ready to go. The needle and seats in here can only withstand so much pressure. Now, they're a very tolerant carb in the way of they'll handle a lot of, they'll accept a lot of pressure before fuel starts coming out of that little hole just underneath that brass tube. So that's the fuel overflow. So it's quite high from where the fuel level sits, which is about where my thumb is, about there. It's about where the fuel level should be, give or take. Not there. So as soon as the fuel gets here, into that little hole, you know you've got some problems. So, now, we'll go over to the whiteboard. I've drawn a pretty picture. See, a couple of dotted lines. Now, the higher line, so I've only got 5.5 PSI here, just as an example. And obviously this is a picture of a rough picture of an HS2/HS4. So don't take into consideration what these pressures are. These pressures are wrong for that carb. These are just pressures from my own car. That's the maximum pressure for an HIF 44. That's the fuel pressure I had in my car. But just to try and illustrate what I mean by how much fuel they can tolerate, or how much pressure they can tolerate, is I've seen these carburetors hold 10 PSI. Now, that'll cause all sorts of issues. When they get up that high, you will find them they flood. At 5.5, they won't quite flood much. You'll find they may still do it, but that's also potentially the design or the taper inside of the needle valve seat. But that's another topic. That's another story. But anyway, so without the fuel pressure regulator, you'd expect the fuel level to be higher, just as basically as the float's trying its hardest to keep that valve closed. Now, look over here. That high fuel level sits higher. So the needle that's in the fuel, you know, if that's where I'm setting the idle mixture, as soon as I take the fuel away from it, sorry, had to deal with a customer. Where was I? So yeah, as soon as I take the fuel away from it, it's you know, the fuel level drops back to actually where it's meant to be in the fuel bowl. Sorry, I'll stop zooming in with this. Yeah, it goes back to where it's meant to be, where the float can control it, and it's actually, you know, in the precise place that it's meant to control the fuel. So by dropping the fuel level inside the carburetor, it drops it and, you know, drops it down the needle a little bit. So then, you know, it's actually runs leaner, or runs in a different point on the needle. So then you've got to richen the mixture up to compensate for that. So there is a wee bit of a drawback by fitting one straight away without doing any adjustments, because, you know, in my case, and this is what I found on my car. So this might not be the case for yours. So just, you know, take it at face value. This is from my car. This is what I've experienced. So anyway, so yeah, there is a number of things that will benefit by fitting a fuel pressure regulator. Just realised how close I am. Now, obviously, by fitting a fuel pressure regulator, it'll prevent the valve seat from overloading, causing that higher fuel level. Because having that higher fuel level will end up resulting in flooding and hard starting and inconsistent AFR readings as well. So if you've got an AFR gauge, you may find that it's here, there and everywhere. But I mean, I'm hoping that if you've got a fuel, if you've got an air-fuel ratio gauge of some description in your car, I'd love to think that you've also got a fuel pressure regulator. But anyway, the other benefits, obviously, you're saving the fuel. You're saving fuel from being wasted, from going through the engine unnecessarily. So that's multiple savings. So that's also savings at the pump, and also savings on the engine wear, because that fuel's got to go somewhere. It's essentially anything that's unburnt goes through your engine. So if you're having overloading issues, because what can happen is with residual fuel pressure. So back over to this lovely thing. So with residual fuel pressure here, if it overloads when you turn the car off, and this can be from thermal expansion as well, you'll end up force feeding the carb, and what you'll find is, this one's got oil in it. There's no needle in here. What you'll find is in here, you'll actually have a trail of fuel, and the fuel will actually come out through here because it's being force fed from residual pressure, trickle down the manifold into the ports while the engine's off. And so what you'll find is you'll go back to start the car up, and it'll take ages to start, and you'll sit there and you'll pump the gas, which does nothing. Stop doing that. It's frustrating to watch because all you're moving is a butterfly. See, that's all that is. There's no accelerator pump on these. So people will sit there and they'll pump the accelerator pedal, or they'll sit there with the throttle wide open, trying to get the thing to kick over, trying to get it to start. Now, there's no problem with having the throttle all the way open, trying to start a car that you're having troubles with like this, because you're just trying to force more air into the cylinder, but that's not really how these carburetors work. So that's probably, if you're having those sort of problems, that's possibly one of the causes is high fuel pressure. So if you're having those sort of problems, get the pressure checked. Now, between saving money from not putting so much fuel on at the petrol station, certainly not so. You're certainly saving money on less engine wear, which is a great plus, because it essentially kind of nearly puts me out of a job as well, being a mechanic and being someone who builds mini engines. So without, I don't actually have a mini engine on a stand for once. I've got one sitting in the corner. You're not washing the bores out with unnecessary amounts of fuel, which is great. So anyway, there is a number of benefits. I've only scratched the surface realistically, but this is what I've experienced on my car. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write some figures up on the board, and then we'll talk about how much fuel savings I got, because people are interested. And this is my original reading, so that's without the heated manifold, and without the hotter thermostat. So that was an 82-degree thermostat. Here's what we're sitting at now, at 34.26 miles per gallon. And this is urban driving as well. So this is 50 to 60 kilometers an hour on average, 9, 10, 11-minute drives to work and home. So not a lot of time for the engine to build up temperature. So short runs. The worst possible conditions imaginable for an engine to be operated in, because an engine needs to be thermally efficient. Hence why I put a hotter thermostat into it, so it gets hotter faster. I mean, I had even considered putting a blanking plate in front of the grille, because at the moment we're dipping into the negatives now, being winter, so more heat. But that 91-degree thermostat's worked wonders anyway, so I'm not going to bother. But anyway, I'm going to write some figures up on the board, and we'll go through that. So one moment, please. Right. So I scrolled through my phone. Back to the photos, because I had all this written up on the whiteboard, and then I decided to take a photo, wipe it all off so I could do this video. Anyway, so going back to here, blah, 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 blah. Fuel pressure regulator, set to 2.2 PSI from 5.5 PSI around town, same driving conditions as these first two. We saw 39.17 miles per gallon imperial, 7.12 litres per 100 kilometres, or 13.87 kilometres per litre. Now, if you look here, you'll see that, you know, there's been quite a change. So, you know, I can now drive what? You know, nearly, well, over 3.5 kilometres further on a litre of fuel. So I suppose it's nearly like, there's a 35% increase, or 36% increase, you know, because I got a 14.3 increase in efficiency from just from my last test. And then overall, I've got a 36.48 increase in efficiency overall. So, you know, I can safely say I've now taken, you know, quite a bit of fuel away from my car to achieve this. Now, I have done an open road test as the car sits, like this. So, from driving from Christchurch, straight road, no one stop, down to Timaru. It was about 144 k's from memory. And this is on AC Dodd's board now as well, for his economy. We had, on the open road, 56.6 miles per gallon imperial, 4.99 litres per 100 k's. Which is absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. That car is sniffing the fuel. I'll put a photo up of what the spark plugs look like after that drive as well. Fair to say they are very clean. And exactly what I'd expect to see out of a car that's just done, you know, 300 odd kilometres in the same day. So we drove down there, had an event, drove home, and then had it sitting in the driveway idling. So there's no, oh, sit at 100 k's, switch the key off. There's none of that. It's leave it idling, open the gates, open the garage, hop in the car, drive it through the gates, turn it off, go get the spark plug, socket, take the spark plug out. That's how all the tests are done on my videos. Obviously just not in my driveway, it's all in the workshop here. So but yeah, if I would wrap this up saying, would I recommend fitting a fuel pressure regulator? Hell yes, I would. Yeah, definitely massive fuel saver. I mean, taking 14% of fuel away from the car that was being, basically pumped through unnecessarily, either ending up down the exhaust or in the oil past the rings. I mean, yeah, that's a massive saving. So now the car doesn't really use that much fuel, which is absolutely fantastic because it's exactly what it should be like. Now, with this number here, the 39.17 miles to the gallon, the following week I drove it like a madman to see what it was going to be like. And I didn't record these readings, and I'm kind of gutted that I didn't, but I know what they were. It did reach 30 miles to the gallon, driving it lead foot. Now, still better than my original reading. Driving it, like I was. The following week after that, I drove it like there was a brick right under the accelerator. Like, barely moving it, waiting for I was probably holding people up behind me at intersections because I was waiting for like the opportune moment. Like, no, I'm going to pull out now. So there was no excessive acceleration, I was checking to make sure that, you know, coming up to an intersection, I had plenty of intersection to go through. You know, going up to a roundabout, make sure there was no traffic, so I could just glide through. So momentum driving without being ridiculous. You know, making sure everything's nice and safe. I mean, slow but fast. I got 40.1 miles to the gallon around town driving like that. So naturally, as anyone would expect, with driving styles come different fuel usages. So these readings are purely from how I drive my car. You might not see the same readings, but again, it's how you drive the car. You can't expect, you know, 40 miles to the gallon around town in an urban setting on short drives if you're lead boot. So there is a massive amount of driving style that has to go into it. Open road driving also, because, you know, we've got 56.6 miles to the gallon. If everything's set up right, you should just be able to sit there on the accelerator, but only just barely, and it should just cruise. Should be like awesome, nice and quiet in the cabin, no massive induction noise. You know, because the engine shouldn't be trying. It should just be sitting there just sniffing the fuel, like sniffing what little vapor is coming through. So yeah, that's it for this series so far. I do still have part 3, which is going to be suspension and wheel alignments. I haven't got the bits underway for that yet. I've still got some things to do on it. I've still got to do tie rod ends. I've got to correct the rear camber and tow, because I know that that's miles out, towing in really aggressively, like nearly every 1275 GT that I've encountered with a wheel alignment plant. So I've got corrections to make. So I'm going to do a video on that as well. I don't know when, but it will be in the future. And then also, as the weather warms up again, because trying to get economy at the moment with how the weather's been, yeah, it's quite difficult to try and maintain that. But anyway, my last video on this will probably be my end result with doing a final super tune, if you will, like a full economy tune, like making my own needle and going right through woe to go once again, making sure that everything's absolutely top notch. So I want to make sure that this thing's, anyone can hop in it and drive it and achieve the same thing. That's my goal. So what I might even do is I might even get one of my mates to drive the car while I drive their car, but we'll see. But anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you've taken something away from this. If you're in the shops, this is the box you're looking for. So Filter King. This isn't the part number. This is the part number for the bigger ones. I believe the part number for the ones that I use are FPR004. I'd show you what's in here if it was another regulator, but it's not. It's a box of spark plugs that I've taken from people's cars that I've been tuning because they're all sorted up. That's basically just a show-off collection. But anyway, so yeah, that's it for this one. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And naturally, I'll have more tuning videos out very soon. There's some twin carbs, some other bits and pieces. Keep an eye on my Facebook page as well. Heaps of updates on there, nearly daily. So go check that out. Go check some of the reels out. Follow me if you want to. But yeah, anyway, that's enough of this. Hope you've liked this. So yeah, please like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we'll see you all in the next one.